motivation. I wake up and tell myself you gotta.
Welcome to the LeaderGrowth Podcast. I'm David Skidmore. This podcast is designed to help you overcome challenges and experience transformation in your life and in your leadership. That's what this podcast is all about, is helping you live and lead out of a transformed life. So today we are having a full cinema episode. I'm really excited about this because sitting here at the table is Jantzen Miller. Let me tell you about Jantzen, and then we'll get into the conversation. Jantzen Miller is an executive coach and business consultant who helps leaders and organizations steward their vision with excellence. Her mission, whether in her professional work or personal life, is to see the potential of people, brands, and situations and speak it with boldness and authority. Before starting her own coaching and consulting business, she worked in the banking, advertising, and nonprofit sectors, helping brands execute their visions and achieve their goals using the power of organized systems and clear communication. As a recovering striver, she has a passion for speaking and creating resources for women of God who are called to be rooted in excellence, not perfection. And Jantzen is based in the Oklahoma City metro with her husband, Sean, son Shep, and rescue dog Murray. And to connect with Jantzen or inquire about her professional services, visit her website at www.jantzenjollymiller.com. That's jantzenjollymiller.com, or find her on Instagram at Jantzen Miller. Besides that, Jantzen is a very close friend. We frequently are sending voice memos. We've gotten to work with each other in the past. And so it is an incredible honor to welcome back our first guest on the LeaderGrowth podcast to come back as a recurring guest. Welcome, Jantzen Miller.
I'm very proud of that fact. So thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big day. We are celebrating your brand new book, Now Before Next, the Stewardship Mindset to help you maximize your resources and intentionally pursue everything God has called you to do. Here's the first question that I want to ask. What was it like to hold your book in your hands?
Oh my gosh. Well, it felt heavier than I think it was supposed to because of the length of time that it took me to write it.
Are we talking like it felt physically heavier or emotionally?
Too. Both, because it ended up being longer than I originally anticipated. But it felt, I mean, it's just, and I think you understand this. When you pour into something for so long, and when you look at something for so long, like your eyes start to cross and you start to wonder, am I crazy?
Oh, yeah.
Is this only applying to me? Will anyone understand this? But to actually hold it in the fullness, I mean, it was, I won't like put it next to, birthing a child, like having my son. But when you carry something with you for so long and then you actually see it in real life, it's just the most humbling experience ever. Where you're like, that was not me. That had to have been a God story.
Yeah. In fact, when you told me that the book was out, I think like when you told me you had even gotten a copy of the proof, my first question was, how's your baby? But I wasn't talking about your son, because when I've held either one of my books, like I've just like had this overjoyed moment. I don't have any children, but closest thing that I've had is a book. Mm-hmm. We might want to take that out.
No, but all at once, you work on something for so long and then it feels like overnight it comes to fruition. The writing process is very difficult, but then when you have the right team in place to help you execute it, whether it be like your editors, your proofreaders, your book formatters, designers, whatever, that's what they do for a living, and they move very, very fast. So to write a book and it take 18 months and then to have it produced in like 4 weeks, it's humbling to where you're like, I thought this was going to take longer.
Yeah. And by the way, while we're there, shout out to the editor, Adam Palmer, who has saved a couple of my books so far. So, and
I don't want you to cut this out, but I have to give so many kudos to you for, we are, like you said, we are great friends, but you truly crossed over to like being my brother last year. And writing this, really, it wasn't the book that I had figured out. It was the book that I was figuring out as I was writing it.
Yeah.
It was the book I needed. And so that process of having to work through the emotions of producing while you're still being produced as a leader. You need good leaders to come alongside you to kind of lift your arms up, so to speak. And you were such a huge asset to me last year and in this book writing process, to where, shout out anybody who's writing a book or thinking about writing a book needs to contact you. Like, you need to be coaching them. You need to be you need to be working with David, because not only is he so gifted in helping craft communication and really work through these big ideas that need somebody else to process through them, but you're also this like wealth of knowledge when it comes to like, who's my editor, who's my, like, everyone came from David. Like, my entire list of resources other than my designer, Presley, it was a David contact. So shout out David. Like, if you want to write a book, contact David.
I love it. What an honor just to be able to be an encourager along the way, because I understand what it's like. The first time that I wrote a book, like, I was checking in frequently with Adam. He was really one of the only people that I knew who had done it. And so I needed somebody that I could talk to say, this is difficult. Am I feeling crazy? And so all of those things. Well, I want to talk about Now Before Next, because that's what we're getting into today. Congrats. The book is out. I mean, this is all happening. So here we go. From the beginning, just what is Now Before Next about?
Now Before Next is this idea, that I feel like the Lord dropped in my head of, what if everything that you're searching for, what if the success you're wanting, what if the impact you're looking to make is not one new idea away? What if it's already buried in what you already have? What if everything you want is already right in front of you, just waiting to be stewarded? And it came from, really, as I mentioned, like, my own experience as an entrepreneur, as a leader, where I had these big dreams, these big goals, these big visions, and I kept looking for like the next best thing. What is the funnel that's going to move the needle? What is the marketing tactic? What is, I need more clients. I need more money. I need more resources. And really, it was kind of this humbling process of, what if I don't need more? What if I actually just need to dive in and maximize what I already have?
Now, we've walked through a lot of this, but I'm going to dig back in as if I'm hearing it for the first time. That, for me, is a challenging thought, because, as you know, I'm an idea person. And so one of the most exciting things is a brand new idea. Why is it essential for entrepreneurs, for visionaries, for people who are out front often, who are generating new ideas, to come back into this simple idea of maximizing?
I think the number one thing is trust. Because when we can be trusted to truly maximize and steward what's already in front of us, not only is it building trust with the people around us who say, I can trust you to take care of and manage what you have. And really, going back to the stewardship concept, it's believing that everything that we have has been gifted to us. We are called to manage it from God. And so not only are we building trust with others, I think it's building this credibility and this trust with our Creator of saying, I can trust you with what you've been given. But it also creates this trust within ourselves. Because when we can truly maximize and take care of what we already have before seeking the next best thing or what we're looking for next, it's building this credibility and trust where, for the future, when these new ideas come up, we won't get hit with this imposter syndrome of like, will this work out? Can I take care of this? Is this going to be the best use of my time? Because we will have built up this like credibility and these stones of remembrance of like, hey, remember when you truly maxed out. Remember when you took something to its maximum impact potential, before sprinting to that next thing.
So for you, a lot of the things that I've written about, a lot of the things that I've done have been birthed out of either a frustration. Unstuck was my own personal journey of getting stuck multiple times. I found that a lot of times there are things that really stir us up to say, I care about this at a deep enough level to spend substantial lifetime, put myself into this. What were the things that helped shape you caring enough to write this book?
As you mentioned, just going through it myself. It was actually in the middle of 2020. I started my consulting business in 2019. So really by the time I was getting ramped up is when the world shut down. And so this is the message that I needed and that I felt like the Lord gave me personally to use it myself before I started sharing it. But then it became more apparent as the coaching clients and then even the business consulting clients that I was working with, they were needing this message too. Because as any high achiever can attest, there's no shortage of good ideas that we want to pursue, right? Like we're constantly being bombarded with messages of like more, get the next thing. So as I had clients come to the table who were like, hey, I have all these things I want to pursue. I have all these goals. I have all these dreams, these ideas. It really was something that I was able to share with them that I was learning or had learned of your greatest impact potential. Like the key that will unlock the door to the most impact you can have is stewardship. And so sharing that with them and being able to give them this message of you don't need more, you need to maximize.
Let's talk about stewardship, because I think stewardship is a word that it brings a lot of different images to someone's mind. One person, when they hear steward, they think of, maybe an older person who has been stewarding something for a long time. For some people in the Christian world, stewardship has a lot of language specifically around financial things. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan, you might be thinking of Lord Denethor, the steward of Gondor. There are a lot of different perspectives when it comes. Yeah, I know, I'm nerding out. There are a lot of different perspectives when you think about stewards. So how do you think about stewardship?
Well, it's funny, and I'll just tell this story. The book I wrote was not the book I intended to write.
Oh, let's get into it.
Okay. So whenever I first started this book writing journey, I had this hypothesis that stewardship involved two things, which was one, being aware of every resource that you have that can be maximized, really auditing every opportunity, so to speak. And then from that list, you literally follow through on everything. Right? Like take every low hanging fruit opportunity for growth and then go max out. Like just go do those things. Go make it happen.
This sounds like you, by the way, to a T. Is like, here's my checklist. And then here's my checklist. Like just all of the tasks, and I'm moving it forward, whether it's in Asana or anything else. And like just deep dives into maxing out on everything that there is.
Check the boxes, get it done.
Yes.
Get it done. So I start writing this book in 2022, August. Okay. My son is 4 months old. And how this started was I had read a book, of course, that was like, hey, if you can give a TED Talk in 5 minutes over something without even preparing for it, that's your book. Go write it.
So you were thinking about writing a book at this time. And It's kind of like,
it's like, oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
Low hanging fruit opportunity. I can write that book in my sleep. Let's go. I've always wanted to do this.
Isn't that it's such a great thing too? Like, oh, this is going to be easy.
It's going to be
writing a book.
Easy. It's going to be. I'm a writer.
I've written blogs.
Not the same. So
I had a Zynga.
I had mapped out my plan of attack, and said, I know what I'm going to write about. I'm going to write about this stewardship concept. It is now before next. It's take care of what you have now before you spend to what next, which is still true. But it was really boiled down to know what you could be maxing out of, and then go do those things, right? Very legalistic. So I start this process, and I'm like rolling this boulder up a hill. Mm-hmm. The words are not flowing. Like I'm finding this tension between like, why is this so hard? And as leaders, we have to be constantly questioning, is the resistance I'm feeling, is it like something that I should be pressing through? Mm-hmm. Or is it like maybe a strategic speed bump that I need to be slowing down and being like, why is this not working? So in this process, and you were a huge part of this journey, I'm like, why is this feeling so forced? Like, I feel like I'm just swimming upstream. I cannot get traction. So finally, this book was supposed to take me 9 weeks. I had mapped out my plan of attack. It was supposed to take me 9 weeks. And it ended up, I think by the time I just struggled through it from August until May of 2023, finally had a completed manuscript and sent it off to Adam, my editor, and was pretty much like, here you go. I'm just done with this thing. I hate it. I don't believe in this message, but at least it's done because I said I was going to do it. I followed the two things. I was aware of what I could do, and then I went and did the thing. He sends me back the completed, what he had edited. And I was like, this is complete crap. Like, I don't believe in this
Nothing
message.
against Adam's editing.
No. The crap was Jantzen, right? Like, it was the work. Adam is amazing. But I was like, this is not it.
I totally understand, because I've had moments where, like, I wrote it, and then on the other side, I was like, this doesn't carry the weight or the strength. It's not that the principle isn't true. There's just not the depth, or it doesn't keep going. And
that's what was so hard too, is I'm like, I did the thing that I thought I was supposed to do. And when this is May of 2023, it was at a time where I knew that the Lord was calling me to a sabbatical professionally. I was wrapping up a contract with a consulting client and had really taken a step back too, since I'd had my son. And so at that time, I just really knew the message is not there. And I'm not sure if I don't believe it anymore, if it's completely wrong, or if I'm just missing a huge component. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board. And it really was during a sabbatical season, which took almost all of last year and is just now wrapping up, to understand that stewardship really is a 3-part process. Like, it is being, first of all, aware of what you could be maximizing in your life, understanding what you already have on the table. But the most important step is step number 2. It's the middle of the sandwich, which is discernment. It's knowing, in a sea of possibilities of what I could be doing, what actually should I be doing?
Yes.
What is the best use of my effort and time? It's asking the Lord, hey, I have a lot of things that I could be working on, but I don't want unnecessary effort. I don't want to work on things in vain. I want to be working on the things that you're calling me to, that are going to best utilize my time, talents, resources for your glory, and that I can be in flow. There's a difference of, like, working with gritted teeth and then working in, like, glory strength.
Yeah.
Where you're like, hey, this is hard, but I have momentum.
Yeah.
Versus I am solo by myself, rolling this boulder up a hill, come hell or high water, and there's no flow there. And so understanding that really took me back to this framework of stewardship, which is, first of all, awareness, then discernment of what I could be doing, what should I be doing, and then following through only on the things that we're called to work on in that season.
I think that's really significant on that second part. I want to come back to that again, because a lot of people, what unlocked opportunities, we talk about founders, entrepreneurs, visionaries, what unlocked opportunities for them originally was giftedness. And sometimes there's an abundance of giftedness. As time goes on, it's more difficult for a lot of people, because the question isn't, what do I say yes to? It's, what do I say no to? There are too many opportunities coming through. How do I discern what's most important to go on? So you have all of that happening, and you go through your own discernment experience where, instead of pressing forward and saying, I'm going to rewrite this book now, you go on sabbatical. Walk me through, what did that look like? How'd you get there? And I know you, I've known you since 2020. I think I met you back in 2019. So if we would have had a conversation fall of 2019, I don't think I would have said, I think Jantzen's going to go on a sabbatical ever. Like that would not have fit into the framework that we've worked together for at least a few months at SALT. We've done some different projects. So what were the things that inspired you to step into a sabbatical?
The first is like this glaring red light that says, I have nothing in the tank. Like, I am on complete empty. I think I took a 4-week maternity leave in 2022.
Wow, just really stretch the maternity leave out.
Like, what a lazy, but I had been running so hard. And by the time 2023 came, I was like, I'm operating out of just this much energy and focus, and I feel like I have nothing in the tank. And this is where having strong community comes in. I was able to, in sharing what my journey was in that time of being tired and burnout, and I have no clarity for what's next. I had several community members who were able to kind of say, do you think God is calling you to a sabbatical? And it lined up with what I felt like he was telling me. So by the time, March 2023 rolls around, April 1st is the day that I officially said, I'm resting. And you were actually the person, I think I voice memoed David and said, I think I'm going to give, again, this goes back to the discernment piece. I didn't have it at the time. I'm making it up on the fly.
Yeah.
This is logically speaking, this is what makes sense. That's how I made decisions back then. This makes sense.
Yeah.
And I reached out to David and said, I'm going to give myself 8 weeks. The Lord said sabbatical, and I'm going to tell him how this is going to work.
Yep.
I'm going to give myself 8 weeks because I only took a 4-week maternity leave.
Yeah.
So 8 plus 4 equals 12, which is the typical maternity leave.
I'm going to make up for that time, and then I'm going to get back to it.
And then we're going to grind. Let's go.
Yep.
And David reached out and was like, yo, I don't think that's how this works. I think that it's going to be at least 4 months, but you probably need to ask the Lord because it may be longer.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, no way. What am I going to do for 4 months? And a lot of fear kicks in, I think, for a lot of people listening, being like, that, how did you logistically make that work financially with your family, all those things? Sean and I made some pretty radical decisions to make this work. And, Sean is very established in his career, which is a huge benefit, for what the Lord is calling me to. It works out. But it's also stretched me to the point where when you are a driver, when you're an achiever and you're told that you can't achieve, it makes you question your worth and identity. Who am I if I'm not producing? Who am I if I'm not achieving? And it kind of, it resets you to a sense of believing, am I worthy?
Yeah.
Even when I'm not producing. And so it's something that I wish I could say, I have it figured out and now I've gotten over it. I mean, even to this day, still having a lot of questions of what does the future look like? What does my business look like? How is this ramping up? I have to go back to that identity piece and say, even on the days when I'm not producing, I'm still worthy.
Yeah. It's the relationship, right? It's the relationship with rest. It's the relationship with God. It's the relationship with walking things out, and that the season you're in now may not be the season that you're in 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now, 6 years from now.
And that's where the discernment piece comes in too, because the game is the path is weaving as we're walking it. None of us are able to see 4 miles ahead of this is where I'm going. We can set the path and the map, but ultimately we're still learning and journeying.
Yeah.
And the discernment piece is so key to know, okay, this is what you said, or this is what I thought I heard you say. Are we still on this path? Or are you leading me to a different direction? It's relationship to know, what season am I in? Where are we now?
Yeah, the where are we now is so important. So let's go back. Stewardship has 3 parts. The first part, once again, is
awareness.
Second part is discernment.
Yes.
Third part,
follow through. We're going to talk through that process. I think what we're going to do at some point, Jantzen, is I'm probably going to need to have you back on the podcast again to talk through sabbatical, because you went on a long sabbatical, and then I ended up going on a sabbatical. And that's something that I've already mentioned with our LeaderGrowth community, is that we're going to do an extended conversation around sabbatical. So we'll probably have to come back into that a little bit more. I want to talk about now before next in those 3 parts. I'm going to read you a few quotes, and then after I read you a quote, I want us to talk about it. Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. If you want to be assigned to the big things, you have to be faithful in doing even the small things he asked you to do. Until we can be trusted to steward the gifts, tend to the blessings, and complete the assignments God gave to us, why would he ever give us more? That quote sounds like the 3 steps that you just talked about. Help me understand what you're saying there.
It goes back to faithfulness. Being a good steward means, are you a faithful manager of what you have? And I truly believe if I'm a manager and I have an employee or I have, someone working for me, I'm not going to give them added responsibilities. I'm not going to give them, and that sounds very legalistic of like, I have to do things for God for him to love me. That's not it. It's, am I faithfully taking care of what he's given me before I ask him for more?
Yeah.
And I think about my own self, like if I was working alongside somebody and they said, can I have a raise? Can I have more responsibility? Can I have this? Can I have this? And I was looking at what I had already given them to take care of, and they weren't doing it with excellence because they were so focused on that, what they wanted. Yeah. Would I entrust more to them? Probably not. And so it's not only that, but this idea of like, we get to take care of things. We get to be good stewards.
Yeah.
We get to maximize the relationships we have. We get to maximize our time. We get to truly care for the dreams and ideas and projects like that we have on our plate. It's not that we have to, or else we're going to get in trouble. It's that there's treasure there.
Yes.
There's treasure there to be mined, and it's our job to go digging.
That's so good, Jantzen. I was talking to a room of talent development specialists just a few days ago. And so all these people who are in learning and development from large organizations and small organizations, some of them consultants themselves, one of the themes that came up in that time was how frequently some of them have experienced a leader who has an idea, the new vision, which is shared on a Monday in a staff meeting. And then 3 to 4 weeks later, there's a new vision. And then 3 to 4 weeks later, and early on, they're bought in. And then as time goes on, you just have a harder time trusting that leader. And if someone on your team is operating in that way, the trust is eroded from that person. And we don't think that applies to us. We usually think that applies to others. In the book, there are quite a few different concepts that you weave through. You mentioned using the whole buffalo. I really like how you wrote this. Even the descriptions that are playing throughout in it. When I shared your bio, one of the things that we mentioned was striving, and you describe yourself as someone who is a recovering striver. Here's a quote. Because anything worth having for the long haul is worth waiting and working tirelessly for. So my question is, how do you steward the relationship between both rest and working tirelessly for?
I think it's just it's a long haul. That there are certain things that we're not going to see the immediate payoff of. And even going back to the example of writing this book or the sabbatical, there's things that I still don't know how it's going to work out, or I don't know how, I don't have it all figured out, but I do know that the grander vision is that that's what I'm working towards. And so I'm just willing to not rush the process. We as leaders, we have to be willing not to rush the process just for this quick fix of growth.
Yeah.
We don't want the microwaved approach. We want the good home cooked meal that may take hours to truly work on. That's what's going to lead to the greatest impact. It's usually not going to be this quick fix of where I understand it all and I just check the box and move on from it. There are going to be some things in life that is not a stewardship process of like, hey, I'm going to work on this until I can complete the box. This is, I'm going to work on it my entire life to make sure that I can get to the end of my life and hear the phrase, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a long game approach.
I see two groups of people primarily when we talk around the idea of stewardship, specifically in the Christian world. One is God's got it, so I don't got to do anything about it. God's got it. The other one is I'm going to own this as if God will never show up, and I'm going to pray that he does. Those are both kind of all or nothing forms of thinking. I'm curious, like, how do you approach things now differently than you may have before going on a sabbatical? As far as I know you, like, you work hard. That's part of how you approach life and how you approach work. But at the same time, you Sabbath hard and you're really passionate about rest. So like, how do you bring those two worlds together? It
is a middle game. You know, like the pendulum swing, like you talk about, it's either I'm passive and I'm just going to tra-la-la, like go through life and hope it works out, or I am striving and it's up to me to make it happen.
Yeah.
And where I have finally settled back in is that middle ground of the effort is our part. You know, the effort is our part. We are called to do things with excellence. The things that God actually calls us to do, not the things that we just want to do.
So once I've discerned it, then it's to bring full excellence to that
effort. That's my job. I'm going to ask God not only what, but how to complete it with excellence. And I'm going to work on that thing. But the outcome, I don't have to carry. I don't have to carry that outcome, because I do know that if I do what he tells me to do, I can release that outcome to him. And he can and will work everything together for my good. So while it gives us motivation to work with excellence, it removes the pressure to perform. Because we know I do what I'm called to do, and I leave the rest up. I leave the outcome up to God.
I've got another quote for you from you. Man, that word intention just feels full of promise and hope, doesn't it? It's everything we want to be, but just haven't gotten around to yet. That sentence is a full, walking, living entity on its own. I mean, that sentence itself feels like there's an entire book from it, which there is. Walk me through that.
Well, I think intentions, you know, as leaders, we have intentions to do a lot of things. We have intentions to be the greatest leaders for our teams, to create life-changing ideas, you know, to have these concepts. We have intentions of being healthy. We have intentions of being like the person we were created to be. But intentions are worthless without action. I mean, and a good idea is just an idea until you actually put feet to it. So it is a call to stop talking about it and do something about it. Again, I don't want to say legalistic, like go do all the things, you know. No, but the things that you are called to, the things that you are called to be intentional about, go do something with it, because those good intentions are completely impactless without action.
That makes me think of, you know, found out that your Deborah group yesterday was watching Braveheart. William Wallace shows us that fate favors the bold, you know. So let's dive in a little bit into the actual book itself. I've shared a few quotes from it. Now I want to walk through the awareness, discernment, and follow through. Let's start, though, at the very introduction. How much did this book evolve from the 9-week sprint to the book that it turned into later on? Walk us through that.
Originally, and this is a part of that surrender process that is sabbatical, of going, I'm surrendering my timelines, I'm surrendering my plans, and I'm just going back to the drawing board. Originally, I remember saying this to the Lord in August: if you want to burn this down, we will. Like, if you
want the whole thing?
The whole thing.
Which is actually a terrifying prayer, because you had already gone public with it. Like, you had told everybody this book's coming.
Yeah. I said, like, if you, it's yours anyways. And again, going back, Stewart, if God is my CEO, my business is his.
Which is such a phrase, right? I mean, like everybody says it's like, God's my CEO. But you're really putting it back on the table and saying, if you want to get rid of this completely, even though I put in all this time, I brought Adam in, he edited it, all of this stuff, like, I'm willing to just walk away from it.
Yep. Because, and again, if it's not, there's no use in doing anything if it's not the right thing. I mean, we don't want a life of like a bunch of just random actions and productions. The goal is, hopefully for all of us, is a life of impact. So I don't want to just be doing something to do it. I want to make sure that it's the thing that is going to truly make an impact.
Yes.
So in surrendering that, I had to say, if this is not going to make an impact, burn it down. And the God that I'd come to know in that sabbatical season, I was believing pretty highly, if you tell me to burn this down, it's because you have something better and you're going to help me do it. And so it's not like I'm going to have to roll a boulder back up the hill. Like, you can help me do something in a week that would have taken me a year. So I just kind of was like, whatever. Luckily, because that would be pretty depressing to be like, there's an entire book there. Luckily, he gave me the download pretty much overnight of, here's how to add to, edit it, do all these things with the format. So once I picked it back up in about September of last year, the process after that was pretty smooth. I mean, I don't want to glorify this or like over romanticize it, but the post-sabbatical writing process was completely different, which is also fun because you're like, oh, God, what you told me is true.
Yeah.
What you told me is true, which is, if I'm doing the things you're calling me to do, if I have the discernment to know the right things to be working on, you will help me follow through. It's not up to me to make it happen. You're going to help me.
Yeah.
So that was really fun to be like, oh, I didn't write complete crap. Like this works, But that process was so much lighter, so much smoother. And truly it almost came together compared to the last process, like the beginning process. It came together so smoothly and so quickly that it just flowed.
In the introduction, you are talking about maximizing resources, but there's this other theme that's happening throughout. I want us to drill down on this a little bit more, which is intentionally pursue everything God has called you to do. You were just getting to it with this idea of, we don't just want to be busy in a culture that glorifies busyness. Right. Tell me a little bit more about this idea of intentionally pursuing everything that God has called you to do.
I think it goes back to putting the blinders on. You and I talk a lot about this, about like the leadership comparison. There are people who are called to and are doing things that are similar to what we're called to do. And it's really easy to want a blueprint. Yeah. It's really easy to be like, I want a blueprint for what I should be doing, the exact steps I should be doing to do this. And we look at leaders and we compare ourselves to leaders or people or whoever who have the thing that we're working towards. And we just want to model our life perfectly, after them. And I think it goes back to, we are each fearfully and wonderfully made. And our callings and assignments are ours, which means there is no blueprint other than the one that God's going to give us. So we have to understand, what have we been called to do? And then asking him, give me the strategy, please. It's not like, let me build the strategy and like, oh, will you bless it? It's, God, you know what I'm called to do. So I need your help to build the strategy so that I can then go intentionally pursue it. I can go after that thing. And I'm going to have to put the blinders on to what other people are doing. Even the people who are doing something similar to me, I'm going to have to put my blinders on so that I'm fully charging ahead at the vision to intentionally pursue the thing that he has called me to do. Not that I want to do, not that somebody else is doing. What are we actually called to do? And we're not going to know that how until the relationship piece is there.
Yeah. I think this is one of the most important and significant things that you're sharing in this book and just throughout. And part of the reason that I'm saying that, if you work with communicators, I've coached speakers and all that, one of the things that speakers or aspiring speakers frequently say is, well, I really like, and then they name their favorite speaker. Really like how John Maxwell talks. Really like how Andy Stanley connects. I really like how Jenny Allen, Craig Groeschel. And people normally model themselves after somebody that they've heard, which isn't a bad thing. Because there are a lot of great things for us to glean from that person's style. A lot of times if you're a gifted young leader, what happens is people go, you remind me of, and then suddenly you begin to see this picture of who you could be based off of who you're trying to be like. For you, I'm not going to ask you all of your people that you were aspiring to be like, but I am curious, what has that process been like for you to say, I'm Jantzen Miller and I'm not this person? And how do you, second part of that question is, how do you go back as you're continuing to grow and maybe new acknowledgments come along to consistently have that definition of your life from God's vantage point?
You know, what's funny is I remember years ago, I was comparing myself to not only leaders on a global, you know, oh, I like that person's book, I like the way this person speaks. But then we have like the people in our sphere, like in this metro, who are doing some things. And I just remember thinking, I just want what they have. I just want what they have.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit ruthless of like, I'll do whatever it takes to get it. I want that thing. And it's not until you really get to this breaking point of self and ego of where you go, I really don't care anymore. It took me getting to that place of worth and identity and going, I'm loved even if I don't do another thing.
Yeah.
That's really hard to believe. Like, that's really, really hard to believe. And it's really hard to believe when you're like, I know I have the potential of being a blank. You know, I have the potential of my life or my business looking like X.
Yeah.
But until you're okay not doing another thing, like until you can just rest in relationship, in being loved, in who you are, you're going to be chasing those things forever. And it took me getting to the point to where I was like, I don't really care anymore. Those desires had been purified down. And that's not like a fun process. That's like things had to burn in my life until I realized like, I'm chasing the wrong things. And this is where I really had this vision had this vision while writing this book of so many people, like thinking about like hospice workers or nurses that like sit with people on their deathbeds. And, they say like, I wish I would have spent more time with my family. I wish I would have done these things. Like, I wish I just would have had joy. And it's like I was able to like fast forward in the busiest part of my life.
Yeah.
Right? Pre-sabbatical. Like I'm running. I'm doing all the things.
Yeah.
I was able to like, it's like the Lord took me to be that person. And he's like, you're going to be working your entire life thinking you're chasing the thing, which is success and influence and, all of these achievements. And you're not going to know your kid, or you're not going to love your spouse well, or you're not just going to rest in who I made you to be. And instead of letting me go my whole life chasing the things and then realizing, oh crap, the thing, which is birthed in presence, like just birthed in like that now moment. That's the true achievement. That's the success measurement, right? Like the thing that we want most of the time is not the right thing. If we are to put ourselves in that position of on your deathbed, you're not going to care that you built $1 billion company. What good is that if your kid hates you?
Yeah.
What good is that if people didn't know you? What good is having the entire world if you miss out on those moments that actually bring you joy and fulfillment, which is to be known and to know people well, to be loved and to love. And so that like I know took a turn, but it goes back to this idea of like, I don't want to spend my whole life working on chasing the next thing. I want to be purposefully present in what I have right now, because what if everything I have right now is the thing that future Jantzen on her deathbed will say, I got it. I did it right because I was present.
Clip it. Woo! We're not done. We talked around the idea of awareness. I want to dig in even more into discernment. Specifically, I want to walk through 4 different things. You started with time. Why did you start with time?
So in the section, the whole first section, when you're evaluating resources, and as you mentioned, most of the time when we think about stewardship, we think about money.
Yeah.
Am I managing the money?
Am I a good steward of it?
Am I a good steward of the money?
Yeah.
And funny enough, that whole first section where you're evaluating all the opportunities that you could be stewarding better, the order in which I put them was not important other than time being first. Like the rest of them, there is not an intentional way that I laid out like the order of which the resources are mentioned, other than time being the first one.
Why did time have to be first?
Because it is the most non-renewable resource that we are most likely unaware of the true value of it. We live in a time in history where we are surrounded by more distractions than ever. Yet most of us are saying, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to get healthier. I don't have time to start the business. I don't have time to rest. I don't have time. Yet, and I jokingly say this, whether you're a baker or Beyonce, like we are all gifted with the exact same amount of time. So it's not that we need more time, it's that we need better use of it. Because at this point in history, distractions are at the highest that they've ever been. I mean, if you think about it, like we have email on our phones. We didn't have that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We didn't have the possible distraction of not being able to be present with our families or our friends, like after hours or on the weekends, because now we are fully connected at any time. And then most of the time we're sitting in rooms and we're like on social media while we're together instead of like actually spending time together. So the distractions and the opportunity to just check out and tune out of what matters most are the highest that they've ever been.
Yeah.
So I think it's our call as leaders who want to be more intentional with our lives is we really have to evaluate, how am I spending my time? Because it is a resource that is the most valuable, because time is actually the thing that will help me maximize all the other things.
Yeah.
But we first have to know how we're spending it, and then know and be aware of how we can make adjustments to be better stewards of it.
Starts with time. You move forward and you talk about relationships. Now, this was the part of the book that jumped out to me maybe the most because of how authentic you went. Not that the rest of the book isn't authentic, but sometimes you're talking from an advisory level, as if you're having coffee with me as a strategist, helping me get my life back on track. But in relationships, you led us into where your most significant relationship, really it had fallen apart. Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So my marriage, I put it in there of like, your relationship with your spouse. In 2021, we were just at that point that I think a lot of people get to, which is, this is not working. Like, we weren't even mad anymore. It was just like, hey,
I'm past mad. It's just,
let's make some business decisions, because like life's too short and we just need to, figure it out, go our separate ways. And I think both of us had a lot of peace about that. Granted, I wasn't talking to the Lord a lot about that. I was like, this makes sense on paper, you know, that we just divvied up and get going. And that had been a long journey. And that's also a thing of like when leaders live together, there's a book about it, when two leaders are married, it's really tough. Yeah. Or it can be.
And Sean is a strong leader.
Sean's a strong leader. And I say that now, like Sean's my favorite person.
Yeah.
So,
Sean's the man.
Sean's the man.
Yeah.
Okay. Muscles, as we call him in our house.
I call him as well. He's got some big muscles. Shout out Sean's muscles.
So we were at that point in our marriage. Didn't have kids at that point. And I went to, we were you were on staff at the time with SALT, and I was going through the leadership training, and it was the last night. Mm-hmm. And there were several stations you could go to that night. Mm-hmm. And one of the stations was like, do you want somebody to speak into, like prophetically, like what God is saying about you? Mm. Which, again, I have grown so much that at the time I remember thinking, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I know what you're going to say, and I just can't wait to hear it. And
that's such a rare perspective. Isn't that rare to just like somebody's like, give me a prophetic word, but I know it's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
Wow. Must be an Enneagram 3. Let's keep rolling.
And I even to the point of like false humility style, I let everyone in that room, there were like 30 of us. I let everyone go first, because I was like,
I'm good.
I'm going to be good. This is going to be good. And I'm really honest with you when I say, before I left for that meeting that night is when Sean and I had some logistical conversations about the future. And so I had like put that in a separate part of my brain, right? This group is going to talk to me about who I am and what I'm called to do as a leader. And like my failing marriage is like not a part of it, because this is me. I'm going to keep going. So one of the leaders that is speaking into us, that we love her dearly, Billy.
Love Billy.
It's finally my turn. And I'm like, tell me about me. And she says, do you know what an intercessor is? And I think I audibly was like, ugh. Because it might, genuinely, this is how much growth I've had. At the time, I thought that prayer was not an effective strategy.
Jantzen, I was working at SALT, and I'm on record for saying at that time, one of the great things about working at SALT was we had intercessors, which for me meant that I didn't have to pray because I could just push the prayer to them.
Push the note across the table.
I thought it was ideal. Yeah.
I did not believe that prayer was that effective of a strategy. And so, and now I will be on record to say it is the most important strategy ever.
Yeah.
So she says, do you know what an intercessor is? And I'm like, yeah, it's what you are. Like, just like that, with no energy to my voice. And she says, well, that's what I hear God telling me that you are. And I said,
oh my goodness.
I pretty much said, shake the 8 ball again, try again. Okay, not it. Like,
shake the 8 ball.
So she said, well,
that's, by the way, for those who are new to this, that's not how prophecy works, but
it's not how this works. But
keep that in there though, Taylor.
Right. That's not how this works.
We keep talking to Taylor here at Rose Record Studio. Keep going, Taylor Moore.
So I said, that can't be true.
Yeah.
Because on my spiritual gifts test that we took at the beginning of this, prayer and intercession was like dead last.
Yep, at the bottom.
At the bottom.
I checked the boxes myself, I know.
Right. I figured that out. And she said, and this is what we love about Billy. I want to be Billy when I grow up. She said, well, I could be wrong. I'm not, but I could be. So you can hold that loosely and go talk to the Lord about that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And there was another leader there who said, I hear God saying that you're a leader of leaders, which I went, yeah, check that box. That's more in line with what I was thinking.
Yep.
So like
leader of leaders, let's go.
Yeah. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear that other thing. So, I'm leaving and I'm walking to my car and I was pretty annoyed because I was like, no. And I hear the Lord say, like, you're a leader who intercedes for other leaders. And again, if you don't believe that prayer is an effective strategy, then you're going to process that as, I'm going to be an ineffective leader.
Yeah.
But as I'm getting in my car, I heard the Lord say, the first leader you're going to intercede for is your husband. And I'm going to give you the real talk. Like, I was like, oh no, this is already worked out. Like, I don't want to work on that thing. I want a new thing. And the Lord was just clear of like, you're going to pray for your husband and your marriage. So, I'm not recommending this, but I had at the time, a book that I do recommend. The book is the Draw the Circle, about like the 40-day prayer challenge by Mark Batterson. I had been recently gifted that book, and I told the Lord, I will pray for my marriage for 40 days. Good luck.
Don't you love like when you give him an ultimatum? Like, I'll give you 40.
I'll give you 40. Again, that's what I don't recommend. I don't recommend giving God an ultimatum.
Yeah.
But at the time, I really felt peace about like, this is already right in front of me. I have this book. I'm going to go through this book. I'm going to do this 40-day prayer challenge. I'm going to pray for my marriage. I will not say like the whole 40 days were hunky-dory, but I became so intentional with my prayer life and praying over myself and praying over Sean. And like, I even had a mentor recommend, she's like, words matter. You know, we know that. And I think that I talk about that a lot in the book, is like, your words have weight.
Yes.
And so we can't just be flippantly throwing around promises, ideas, words. Like, it matters what we say. And so she recommended, she's like, when you pray, even pray that like the Lord would put a block over your mouth so that no criticism or contempt slips through. That there are only gemstones of praise and affirmation that come through in that time. And I was like, okay. But doing that every day made me realize the full power of the weight. And it humbles you to the fact of like, it's really easy when you're in relationship with anybody to be like, you're the problem. This would be fine if it weren't for you.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm not the problem. But by intentionally praying over yourself and by praying over that other person, you're actually having to admit, I have to humbly come and admit that I have some things about me that are not great.
There's some things going on here that need to change.
Need to change. And I have the power of my words. My words are a huge part of that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be so intentional with my words. So prayed over Sean, prayed over myself. At the end of 40 days, we had randomly booked a trip to Lake Tahoe, which when we lived in California, we went to all the time, and it's our favorite place. And when we got to Tahoe, we had a completely different marriage. Like, I thought about him differently. I spoke to him differently. The posture of my heart towards him was different. And it was all because of prayer. And this idea of like, instead of asking for something new, I'm gonna fully go all in on what I have right now. I'm not just going to keep that vision of that perfect marriage, which we all, if you're married or you want to be married, like you're like, hey, I want the best marriage possible. But so often we have that vision and we allow the enemy to tell us that that vision can only be accomplished with somebody else. That like, we're going to focus in on that like 10 to 15% that's not being fulfilled by that person. Like we're going to focus and then we're going to go find somebody that's going to fulfill that. But the problem is that like that 80 to 90% that your spouse is checking the boxes for, you might not get that with somebody new. And there's something about something that has been forged in the fire and worked for tirelessly. That while I still don't have a perfect marriage, but when you're on this side of it and you're like, I freaking love that guy. Like that's my person. I wouldn't trade him for the world. That only comes after the test. You know, that comes from like the type of love that isn't honeymoon love. That comes from the type where you're like, you know where the skeletons are buried and so do I, and we're in it. And we fought for it.
That's good. That's literally what you're talking about in Now Before Next, where you're thinking about something else that could be next and then coming back into what's now and realizing that there's way more and that the 80 to 90% and so on, that there's more gold there. And one of the greatest things I believe that we can do in any of our relationships is what you just talked about, as both as leaders, but just as people, calling out the gold in others. And one of the things that can help us do that is going back into prayer. I called both of these discernment. These are both awareness pieces that then we bring discernment into. Time, relationships, awareness. One of the things that you talk about for us to become aware of is our health. Why is it essential for a leader to be aware of their health, but also to maximize their health?
Well, I think first of all, because health is usually the first thing to go. You know, when we're chasing all the other things that we feel called to do, it's really easy to martyr health, you know, because we're like, hey, is my health directly impacting other people? It's easy to think that answer is no. You know, it's easy to believe that lie. And we think that health becomes a selfish thing. So therefore it's like, oh, we're going to put it last. Look at how humble and selfless I am. I'm putting my health last. You know, I'm staying up late. I'm grinding. I'm not slowing down. I'm going to max out for all these other people and for the vision and for the company and for my family. And I'm willing to put myself last. Look at how selfless I am. But the hardship is kind of like time. I mean, health is a foundational element that drives so many other things. And so I talked about, you know, past client and friend who she's rocking it, man. Like she's traveling across the world and doing these incredible things. But when she comes home, when she comes back to the city, she's done. You know, like she can't get out of bed some days. And so not to say like that's wrong. There are going to be certain hustle sprint seasons. But if we stay in that mindset and if we truly like martyr our health for the greater good, we're really not helping. Like you're hurting in the long run. Your impact is going to be diminished if you don't truly prioritize the resource that is your health. And I think we can talk about, rest is a huge part of health. And it's really easy. I talk about how, like, in today's age, we're talking about self-care all the time. Go buy a new bath bomb and it's going to help you rest. Like, go buy this new thing, or like, we're going to do all these self-care practices. Self-care is a $10 billion plus industry a year. And it's because we don't know how to rest. And and I know this is going to come across like kind of hitting hard on this rest topic, but rest is built into the 10 Commandments. Like, we've created a $10 billion industry out of something that is right next to don't kill people, which is take a weekly Sabbath. And that's hard. I mean, like, that's hard because, like, that's very counterproductive. It's very countercultural, is this idea of like weekly rest. And we may not want to go further down this topic, but I feel very strongly about it because our health, I know there's a saying like, your health is your wealth. It's true. Yeah. As somebody who just like was sick for 2 weeks. Yeah. And you can't get anything done. You can't push through that. You can't push through bad health. So it's like, that has to be a foundational thing where you're taking care of yourself, not because it's selfish, but because it's actually helping you have a foundation to then go do the things that you're called to do.
Yes. It's essential.
It's essential.
You talk about building relationships with others that are stronger because you're maximizing, because you're finishing what you started. Have you seen health shift relationships as far as how people respond to a leader who is healthy, as far as responding to a leader and trusting that person just based on how rested they are, whether or not they're moving each and every week, just some of those things that you talk about?
I'm going to frame it in this way, is in today's age, we're all trying to be special. We're all trying to be set apart. Yeah. We're trying to be different, I'm not quite sure that there's anything more different or like countercultural in this time than a leader who says, hey, if you email me on the weekends, I'm not emailing back.
Yep.
I'm resting.
You're setting the pace for the entire organization.
For everyone to look and go, if that guy or if that woman is doing that, it gives me permission to do it. If they're prioritizing their family over productivity, it gives me permission to do it. Yeah. If they're resting well and taking care of their health and they are, eating well and working out and like just doing those preventative maintenance things that we do to stay healthy and, stay a driver, it gives other people permission to be that as well. But it also makes you stand out. And in a time in history when we're all trying to have unique ideas and to be like special enough to slow people down, to be like, what I'm saying is different, I'm not quite sure there's anything that's going to make you be more out there than by saying, I'm going to rest when the rest of the world is sprinting. Oof. So not only from a standpoint that, hey, it's going to help you, it is the thing you should be doing, but also like it's going to make you stand out. Yeah. Because that is not a popular thing right now.
Oh, that's good. You talk about time, relationships, health, finances. You talk about more than just those things, but those are a few that you're really touching on here. Along with this, one of the things that I love about Now Before Next is you include some tools. That includes a resource audit, goal setting, daily planning sheet. Walk me through this idea of a resource audit. What are we talking about?
It is evaluating every resource that you have at your disposal that you could be stewarding better.
Okay, so when I hear that, I start going, whoa, I mean, like, you don't just want me to read a book, but this is going to become a job as well. It's like, What does that look like for us to begin to evaluate all of our resources?
Taking the time and the space to really say, what do I have in front of me? You know, and we do this. I do this with clients. Like if it's a business consulting client, they have these great goals and ideas. But one of the first practices that I do is we do an audit. You know, what do you currently have? Because it could be that the challenge that you have that we're trying to accomplish, you already have the tools at your disposal, like that we could be solving that challenge with. We don't need to go buy a new tool. We don't need to go get a new resource. So in the same way, we have to slow down and using like the list of resources that I walk through in the book that we need to be reframing as a resource. It just, we take an entire at a glance view of what do I have currently in front of me. And it's, you've looked at it, like you've done it. It's not something that's such a hard chore. It's more of it's a treasure hunt.
And it allows you to see again, like, oh, this is a resource. I mean, one of the things we talked about earlier is time. Have you noticed when you work with people, like, is there a common, this is the most overlooked resource that people miss out on?
What have you already started but not completed?
Say it again, louder for the people in the back.
This idea, I think I say of it's an overlooked growth opportunity. You know, what have you already started but not completed? And it's hard because that in itself, you're like, well, that's not a resource. That was just an idea, or that was just, you know, a project that I started that really never gained steam. But it could be that when you started working on that thing, that the timing was off. Or, you know, that you didn't know what you know now. It could be, I use the example of like, if you've seen Wonder Woman, the evil doctor, right? Like the female who's like trying to come up with this like mustard gas formula. She's working her tail off to find this formula, going through it like just day after day, like, you know, scraps of paper going everywhere. And finally, it's like this moment where like this scrap of paper like blows in front of her and she like unfolds it and she's like, I've got it. It was right there.
Yeah.
It's just that she didn't know that what she had already started working on, that was the key that unlocked everything. Not recommending evil genius strategy, you know, but it's this idea of like, what if the thing that you've already started working on, you need to pick back up. You need to dust it off the shelf a little bit and get it back down and be like, is there something that I could start this back up? And maybe who I am today and the information that I have and the perspective that I bring to the table is just the perfect balance to take this thing to the next level.
Yeah, because I want you to talk to some people directly on this, because I've been in this seat. There are some situations in life where God goes, pull back. We're not doing that. Like you said earlier, one of the most important things in this is discernment. There are other times where it's hard. We become afraid. We deal with the voices in our head, comparison, whatever it may be. And because we don't want to take that long trudge through the night again and again and again without a blueprint, with maybe just a compass, maybe just a word, maybe just letting the process take each step. When we talk about doing something and maximizing our resources, sometimes we stop something because we're like, I'm a little overwhelmed by this. And sometimes God goes, you need to put that away, which is the discernment piece. But other times it's not because God said that. Sometimes it's because we got really anxious about it. We ran into our own fear. We ran into our own thoughts of like, this is never going to work out, or you're not going to be able to achieve this. You won't accomplish this. What would you say to the person who has allowed fear, anxiety, confusion to back them into a corner and keep them from stepping forward and accomplishing, fulfilling the thing that they were going to do in the first place.
Are you going to let your ego and your pride stand in the way of your greatest impact? Because sometimes we put things on the shelf because it's pride really framed as insecurity. I don't think I'm good enough to complete this. I don't think I have what it takes. I don't feel prepared enough, qualified enough, whatever. And then sometimes it's pride, which is I get to choose. You know, as you talked about visionaries, who come to the table every Monday with a new vision. Sometimes it's just pride of like, hey, I don't really want to work on that anymore. And I get to choose what the impact is. I get to choose what's important. I get to choose where we're going instead of really looking at the greater good, which is what is the thing that's going to make the greatest impact, even if I have to put my ideas on hold to pursue the idea that is going to be best for this time right now.
Yes. What you're saying right here, I think is huge. There are a lot of people who will not step out because they are afraid of being perceived as prideful. But there can be a hidden pride even in that, because stepping out means that you have to risk more. It makes it seem like you have this idea of everything that you want to do in life, but maybe it's not that. Maybe it's the very thing that you're talking about here, where you said, I have a sense that I need to do this. I need to write this book. This didn't just happen. Like, this was a passion. It was a burning thing. And frankly, it's really easy. Most people will stop, but you didn't stop. Let me ask you this. Now before next, like I said, we got the resource audit, the goal setting, the daily planning sheet. These are all really great resources that you're going to get when you get the book. You got to go get this book. It's going to change your life. Let me ask you this, Jantzen. What made you finish it? Because you could have walked away during the sabbatical. That's a really great time to refresh. So what made you say, I'm going to finish this?
It goes back to the worth and identity piece, which is the pressure's off. I think so often we let this idea that we have to be all things to all people, like, stop us from doing anything. Like, I need to create the best book ever.
Yeah.
And if I can't do that, I'm not going to do it at all. Or
it has to fit everybody.
It has to fit everybody. This has to change everyone's life. And it went back to this idea of like, if the only person that reads this book is my kid, is that enough? Yeah. The pressure's off. If I can help one person, impact is a game of inches. I say that in the book. Impact is a game of inches. We think usually that impact looks like this big significant thing with these vanity metrics. But really, if you boil it down, there are people who are reaching millions of people, but they're not truly creating an impact. They're adding to the noise, but are they actually changing somebody's life? Are they helping them transform? We have to reframe what we think impact looks like, because that's the purpose of this book, right? To be a better steward, to maximize your resources, to do everything God's called you to do, really so that you can have a significant impact in your life. But if you think that impact is by people praising you and it being all things to all people, you're going to miss it. You'll never start, because you're going to try to be so perfect that you just let it hold you back. Or you're going to produce the thing and it's not going to meet your expectations, and it's going to stop you from doing the next thing. But if you see impact as a game of inches, where you're like, what is the thing that if it does this, it will be a success? What does that success measurement look like? For me, the book was, if I can create a legacy piece that my kid says, that's how my mom was. My mom believed that. If I can give my clients something to say like, hey, if you get nothing else from me, you get this. I'm at least imparting this onto you. That was enough. And I had to decide what does the true impact measurement look like? That's what drove me. But whenever at the beginning, when the impact measurement was, I want it to reach as many people as possible. I want it to be this big thing. Again, I was focused on the outcome, not the effort.
You know, part of what I love about this book is that it's written very freely. The language in it is very free. And the reason that I like that is because you went to that place where you were writing not for everyone else, but you were simply writing because you believed it and you wanted to create. As I'm reading it, I can tell you're wanting to create the best book that you can for whoever's going to read it, as opposed to I'm going to write something that's going to fit everybody. There's no fear in this book. And I love that about this. Like I said, you got to get now before next. Apply what's here. It's going to shift your life. Jantzen, we're wrapping up here. Somebody's about to buy the book, but before they even do that, before they get it in the mail from Amazon, they're just wrestling with, okay, what do I do now? Like, where do I start? Because I'm not totally sure what to do with all of the resources, all of the different things that I do have. Like, how do I get started? And how do I make sure that this time I follow through?
Going through this process of once you're evaluating your resources and looking at them differently, and then truly saying, I want to make the right decisions, not just the busy decisions. The follow through process is the most tactical and practical part of the book, you know? And that's where it all boils down to, if you're thinking about how to do things in advance, it is going to make things feel more effortless. We have this idea that like, I want things to feel effortless. So I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to go. And it's, you know, this as just a part of your own routines. The more we prepare well up front, you're going to set yourself up for success later. Like, it's going to feel effortless. So when people are thinking through this process and being like, it feels too much, I really don't know where to start. You know, I know I'm seeing the things in front of me. I'm starting to discern the right things that I need to be working on. Oh gosh, what now? The follow-through process really is as simple as letting yourself dream and map out what are the steps that it's going to take for this to go from conception to completion. Like working it out in advance, letting yourself dream, letting yourself, you know, truly go down that roadmap of what are all the things that need to happen for me to make progress on this thing I'm working on at this time. And while many of us are like, I don't want to slow down. Like that takes time, that takes intention, that takes effort. Like I got too much going on.
Yeah.
I will just say, in order for something to feel effortless, there has to be extensive preparation on the front end. So if you do the work of truly helping yourself plan out something from conception to completion, not to say that there won't come things along the way that get added in, but if you do the work of being purposeful in how you're going to follow through on something and giving yourself a plan of attack, it's going to feel much lighter as you go, because you'll clearly see, like, that's where I'm going, and now I can reverse engineer how I'm going to get there.
Yeah. Wow. Now before next, people can pick it up on Amazon. If you're interested in connecting with Jantzen, you can follow her at Jantzen Miller on social media. You can also find out more about Jantzen at JansenJollyMiller.com. Jantzen, thank you for being such a good friend to me. As you said earlier, I do feel like a brother. Thank you for being a sister to me. Thank you for being someone who is going to hear a voice memo and then send one back. When I've sent you several SOS, I don't know what to do in this moment. But thank you for this gift, because the book is a gift. It's a labor of love that you've created for a lot of people. I know that you said that you're comfortable if only Shep reads it, but a lot of people are going to read it and be changed through it, because it just carries that kind of strength, that kind of weight to it. So thanks for being on the Leader Growth podcast, and look forward to hanging out soon.
The formula. Watch me demonstrate. See, I'm determined and dedicated. Watch what I create. And when resistance is persistent, I go harder in a pain. I just put you up on game so I can watch you elevate. Let's fly. Wake up in the morning, no snooze. Start my day off with a prayer. I won't